Welcome to Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. Well, it's really going to be more of the same. Where you've been over the last couple of days is where you're going to be today and tomorrow in relative terms to your temperature, your wind conditions, whether or not you're really cold, whether or not you're like spring. Basically, everything kind of holding in place. And once we get into the weekend, everything gets unjammed and things start to change for everybody. First of all, we have a little wave that's going to come through the region today. We'll show you on radar. We've got areas of rain and snow moving out of the Pacific Northwest into the northern Rockies today. It's not a terribly strong wave, but what it will do, it'll whip up the wind in the wind-prone areas, especially Wyoming, and it will bring another round of some snow to the mountains. It's moving so fast, at least the mountains of the Intermountain West won't get a ton of new snow, but several inches worth in the higher mountain ranges, especially western Wyoming, and it will just whip the wind up as it comes through, as strong jet stream winds are associated with it. A stronger, colder push comes through the region during the day Friday into the early morning hours of Saturday. That system has a good chance of bringing light to moderate snowfall to some lower elevations, and it's going to drag the colder Canadian air that's been locked up in the northern areas further south. That's going to start a process that will allow the pattern that's kind of stuck now to get unstuck, and a shift in the pattern is going to allow a widespread big push of very, very cold air coming out of Canada into the northern and northwestern areas of the United States, and the Arctic air will be able to go much further south. So we have for the next 3 days, for those of you who are in the spring-like mode right now with very, very mild temperatures and the wind, you will go back to very cold temperatures this weekend and into early next week. And there's going to be a little Arctic-Pacific mix, which is going to throw some moisture into the equation. So with the Arctic air, there's going to be a little bit of snowfall coming in some areas next week as well, something we'll have to keep an eye on. Snowscapes, where there was snow and where the Chinook winds and the mild Pacific air is staying away. So you've got a lot of snow cover here across this shot here across northern Wyoming. Nice shot of a beautiful snowscape there across the Bighorn region. And then the skies cleared briefly over the Wind River Mountains yesterday, allowing a great shot of Apenglow as we saw the clouds move out, a little break in the weather yesterday. However, the Wind Rivers will be shrouded in clouds and snow as we get into today and tonight and off and on through the whole weekend. So the high country going to be looking at another barrage of snowfall. And even getting into those southwest mountains of Colorado, the Estes Park region here, as you see in this photo, and down into the southwest areas of Colorado as that shift southward will bring snow into the region. There's another great shot from the other side of the Bighorn Basin. Great to see that moisture and the snow cover there in the basin from last weekend and early this past week's snow event as the Arctic wave came through. Speaking of the Arctic wave, got a great trace here of temperatures at 1 minute intervals. Now this is for Monday. This goes back to when the Arctic wave was playing tag along and east of the Continental Divide. So if you look over here, here's your scale with temperatures. So you can see temperatures here well into the 50s during the early part of the day on Monday. And then you can see the Arctic wave is coming through and playing tag, where we had a big drop in temperature as it came in, a big warm up as it retreated. Then the Arctic air started to slip back in, and then it got deeper and came all the way in, and then temperatures dropped all the way down into the teens by yesterday morning. When you're on these Arctic boundaries like this, you can get these wild swings in temperature. And look at that over a several hour period where the temperature just went all over the place. And a lot of folks east of the Continental Divide experienced that yesterday as well, as the cold air, kind of like waves on a beach, were going up against the terrain, then would wash out, come back again. And you'll see this a lot of times in the situation that we're in. There's that pocket of very cold air, the cold air over the water here in the Pacific. Here's the next wave, and here's another wave coming in behind it right here that will be coming up and coming into the coast right behind this one. So the counterclockwise rotation around this big low is pulling these systems off the Pacific, driving them through California, the Pacific Northwest, and into the central and northern Rockies. So this pattern stays basically like this today, tomorrow, and then as we get into Friday, this area right here will start to get unjammed. And there's a radar shot from this morning. Here's the overrunning snow into Montana and southern Canada, across northern Idaho into western areas of Montana's mountain ranges. Then you can see where the warmer air is, as this is a rain-snow mix in southern Idaho and northern Utah. Colder air up here brings the snow. The milder air keeps it more like spring. So that wave will come through the region today. As it does so, we have high wind watches and warnings from the Cody-Meeteetse area through Casper, Cheyenne, into the Laramie area and along the I-25 and I-80 corridor. The winds will just howl there. We have a lot of winter weather. A lot of this is going to be freezing rain across the nation's midsection as the Arctic air is wanting to move south and is interacting with the warmer, moist air coming up from the south and west. So there's a lot of winter weather along this Arctic boundary throughout the nation today. You can see that flow of air just west to east coming through. This is by about noon today. There are the very strong winds coming on the backside of the lower end of this trough here. And if we look at the jet stream winds at 30,000 feet, they're screaming. So you've got winds nearly 150 knots or better rippling through the region today. That's why we've got these high wind watches and warnings for this area right here where it's going to be super windy today. The moisture gets driven into the mountains and you're going to see some snowfall. We're going to show you several temperature maps. These are the temperature anomalies just around the noon hour today. So you can see the Arctic air is retreated just up to the Wyoming-Montana border, getting pushed. The warmer air gets all the way into Yellowstone Park and Jackson and most of Wyoming. Then along that boundary, you're going to see those high winds. Precipitation looks like this. The moisture between now and tomorrow morning looks like this. So this is the next 24 hours. So you can see California, even down into southern California, to get into the rain. And then this wave will bring snow to the northern mountains of Utah, western Wyoming, southern Wyoming, and the central and northern mountains of Colorado, but only a little bit of shower activity on the plains. Significant overrunning snows continue up here. That's what the snowfall looks like. You see that overrunning snow just continues. It just keeps snowing up there as the Arctic air is overrun by Pacific moisture, building up quite a bit of snow cover up here in this pattern. And this will play a role in the temperatures as we look ahead into next week. By Friday, this is when things get unstuck. We don't have that situation anymore. It gets unstuck and we have this trough beginning to push in. And here's the wave on Friday. It breaks off from the main low and is going to come in, but it's going to take a track that's more east-southeast instead of due east. So during the day Friday, this wave moves through. West to east, rain and snow will develop in the Pacific Northwest, into the central and northern Rockies. Then the colder air pours in behind it by Monday. So the flow of air, instead of coming off the Pacific, now is coming right out of Canada. So basically, the Pacific gets cut off. So the pipeline of mild maritime tropical air that we showed you yesterday basically gets cut off. So the door to Canada opens, and that is the air that's going to come in. So this is an air mass change. An air mass change takes place between Friday and the weekend. So this will start into motion another Arctic surge coming out of Canada into the lower 48. So temperature readings are going to fall. This is today's wave and Friday's wave put together. So when you put them together, very impressive amounts of moisture for California, getting into the northern Rockies. We still have a bias of the better, deeper moisture being up to the north. But notice there's a bit more green across portions of Wyoming and South Dakota here. This is the wave on Friday that's going to bring some areas of light to moderate snowfall to some lower elevations, especially into this area here. And we're going to have some icy roads and highways Friday afternoon, Friday night, into the day Saturday here. Temperatures are going to really get cold behind that trough. This is the snowfall forecast between now and next Monday. So we are starting to see some snow get a little bit further south here, but you can see the deeper snow is going to be along that boundary. This change, though, will really unleash the cold. So let's step through that. Temperature anomaly looks like this tomorrow, basically the same. This is what it looks like on Friday, basically the same. But as we get into next week, the establishment of this large high going very far north displaces that cold air, and all of the central and western United States will be subject to Canada. And look at these temperature anomalies by Tuesday. Here comes the Arctic air. The air up here is going to be really, really cold. We talked about the snow getting more widespread and deeper up there from this overrunning. So that's going to really set the stage for some very cold temperatures in Montana, the Dakotas, parts of northern Wyoming as we get into early next week. And notice we got a blue norther here in Texas. That Arctic air going to end up getting pushed pretty far south. Not as far south as the Arctic wave in January, but this one will be pretty impressive. So by early next week, look at these temperatures by Wednesday morning. These are the forecasted low temperatures by Wednesday morning. So we're getting to sub-zero across portions as far south as Colorado. We've got a lot of minus 30s up here. I would not be surprised next week if in parts of this part right here in this oval I showed you could get close to near 40 below. I think it's on the table. So for folks up there, there's more cold coming, and it's going to be severe cold early next week. So the pattern changes. The Pacific gets cut off. Once the Pacific gets cut off, we have Arctic air that overspreads the area. These are the wind chill values by next Wednesday morning. Minus 36 there in Gillette. So we're not done with the cold by any stretch of the imagination. By Valentine's Day, we're still in the same configuration. We still have Arctic air that's going to want to be over this part of the nation here. But as we get to the end of the week, notice we're getting a little interjection of some Pacific flow. So what this will introduce by late next week and next weekend, if this pattern does develop like this will add a little bit of moisture to the equation. So that might mean as we get to the end of next week and the following weekend, better opportunities for snowfall in this circle here because the Pacific air will get entrained into the situation. So enjoy the mild temperatures. I know you're not enjoying the wind. Nobody does. But those winds will keep you mild for 3 more days. After that, it's back to winter, and not just in the northern areas, but expanding much further south and east. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.